Right, okay, so let's get started. Now, can anybody tell me what nutrition actually is? I know it's a bit of a crazy question, but...
nutrients you feed your body.
Yes. Now, when it comes to fitness, training, a lot of people get into the habit of thinking that there's secret foods that you need to eat, there's certain foods that you have to eat. But to be honest, we kind of always lose focus of what nutrition actually is. So, as we move through this, we are going to cover a range of topics that hopefully explain that to you. Now, it's a lot to cram into an hour, so taking the opportunity to sort of educate on the things that we basically don't always take into consideration when nutrition is the point of today. So obviously nutrition is the process in which we provide the body with the nutrients that are going to be necessary to feed it. Now again, especially in a gym environment, we always think about training, building muscle, losing body fat. But what we forget is that our nutrition also contributes to factors that we don't think about. For example, me just standing here just now doing nothing, breathing, liver function, kidney function, all your vital organs, unless we were feeding our body with nutrition, none of that is going to function. So effectively, we wouldn't be alive. Now, when it comes to nutrition, there is no one size fits all for anybody trying to kind of, chase down their goals of dropping body fat, gaining muscle, or just, maintaining your current body composition. And that's simply because we all live different lifestyles. We've all got different jobs. We've all got different body compositions to begin with. We've all got different daily activity levels. So this is why it's never a good idea just to jump on Google and ask Google how many calories you should be consuming, because it's never going to be accurate. In order to find these things out, we have to collect data from our own body in order to be able to, make these calculations to get things accurate enough to move forward and achieve the goals that you've set out to achieve. Now, can anybody tell me what macronutrients are without looking at the screen? Okay, so we've got 3 macronutrients. We've got carbs, proteins, and fats. Now, a lot of the time when I have clients join me, for coaching in particular that are looking to lose body fat, they always think that carbs are the devil. I was on the phone to my mum a couple of nights ago. She asked what I was up to, and I told her that I was planning a nutrition seminar. She asked what the seminar was going to be, and I told her roughly, I'm going to be covering things like carbs, proteins, and fats. And I said to her, can you tell me anything about carbs? Her first reply to me was, oh yeah, they make you fat. They don't, okay? And it's little things like that that I want to clear up today. Now obviously we've got our carbs. Most people know what protein does. Fats is something as well that a lot of people aren't very educated on. So we often associate healthy food with protein only. So that's what I want to change here. I want to educate you on what these macronutrients are going to bring to your body and how you can then take that forward into your training and your fitness journey. So again, these 3 macronutrients contribute to the unconscious functions on your body: breathing, temperature regulation, digestion, cell repair. Every function of the body requires energy, which is going to be delivered by these macros. Again, macros, carbs, proteins, fats. You look there and you see what we class as healthy foods, okay? Now, carbs. This is probably the biggest macronutrient that I would like to cover today, simply because of the misconceptions that go with it. It is our body's greatest energy source. Now, when you ingest carbs, they then provide the glucose that we use for energy. Now, with glucose, it can then be stored to glycogen, which can be then used later on as a source of fuel as well. So this is why You know, we are always looking to make sure that your body is properly fueled. Now, carbs are going to be your biggest source of fuel simply because that is their purpose. You'll also get sort of fuel coming from fats and protein, but not as efficiently as what you would from carbs. Now, if we're looking at this from an exercise scenario, the best time to consume carbs is pre and post workout. Now, this is where you're going to begin the recovery process. With the recovery process, I simply mean replenishing the glycogen levels that have been used. So for a lot of people, you know, you'll sort of get like a lightheaded feeling, a little bit dizzy, a little bit shaky. That is a sign that your blood sugars have dropped. And if you don't replenish them, you know, you could end up going into what we call hypo, which is where your body is just completely destroyed of any energy that it's then going to use to function. So this is why it's really important to make sure that the priority of your carbohydrate intake is based pre and post workout to fuel the session and to replenish the session. Now again, looking at deprivation of carbs, because this is something that I see quite a lot when people are trying to diet in particular. Yes, there will be scenarios, for example, in a competition prep where we have to run low carbs for a sustained amount of time. And that's where people will feel it affect their mood. Now, the reason for that is because there is a hormonal process when you take in carbs that are going to contribute to your mood. So if you're continuously running low to no carbs, not only is your look going to start to dissipate within your physique, but it can also affect your mood greatly, and it can affect your ability to recover, your ability to sleep as well. So hopefully, you know, with the next slide, it's going to show you how important that really is. This here's a diagram of the brain, okay? And what we've got here is serotonin. Now, serotonin is what functions our mood. We need good levels of serotonin in order to feel happy and in order to be able to sleep. Because when the chemical process takes place, serotonin is then converted into melatonin, and the melatonin is what helps you get to sleep at night. Now, if you're not taking in enough carbs, that's why you will then eventually struggle with your recovery, because your sleep is going to be impacted. Now, this debunks the old saying of don't take carbs in after 6 o'clock at night. It's a load of rubbish. Doesn't matter where or when you eat your carbs throughout the day. Eating them after 6 o'clock at night isn't going to make you fat, okay? If anything, it is then going to contribute to you recovering better. And this is when I'll do my client check-ins and I'll ask clients how their sleep is. If their sleep is really poor and they're struggling for a decent quality of sleep, I'll try a lot of sort of different things, you know, within their plan to help that. If it's not working, I will always then put in a certain amount of carbs with their last meal before they go to bed at night. And 9 times out of 10, it always fixes their sleep, because they're then able to convert their serotonin into melatonin. Now, again, when it comes to intaking food, digestion is key, okay? A lot of people think that when they ingest their food, it sits in your belly, okay? Now, to a degree, it does, but when carbs are digested, they're digested through the small intestine, okay? Which is then broken down into glucose. That is then delivered into the liver, which is then released into the bloodstream. So this is quite a complex process for your body. Now, this is where meal timings and carb sources that you're selecting to eat become really important. Now, straight away, what we've identified just for the opening part of this seminar is that carbohydrates are used for energy. They contribute to your mood. They contribute to your training performance. Unless we're digesting those are key areas that you're going to miss out on. So I have a lot of clients, again, that come to me that can end up bloated at points, and they can end up not going to the toilet for days on end. Before I do anything, I will always look at fixing their digestion, because unless we're able to digest these foods efficiently, you're not going to get the best out of your food. Now, when the liver breaks the carbohydrates down into glucose and it's released into the bloodstream, it will then be used immediately as fuel, and what isn't used immediately will then be stored within the muscle so that you can use it later on as a source of fuel as well. So this is why I will always try to break up my clients' carbohydrate intake as evenly as possible throughout the day as I can, because a steady intake is going to keep everything running smoothly. If we're having big, massive carbohydrate meals and then going into a meal where we don't have any carbohydrates whatsoever, your body's going to start second guessing itself, because through that small intestine, that's where we need it to be efficient. Now, this is where the different carb sources come into play, because we've got fast acting carbs and we've got slow acting carbs. Now, these will often be referred to in different names. That's what we're going to cover next. But the structure and function of glycogen is as it is in this diagram here. So as you can see, the liver then releases the glycogen into the blood, which turns into glucose, and that is then transferred into the muscle, which is used as energy. So it's a fairly simple process, but in order for the glycogen to get into the liver, it has to be broken down well enough through the small intestine. And this is where we come to speak about the different types of carbs. And this is where you've got your fast acting and your slow acting. And this is where we use what's called the GI index. And this will measure how quickly those carbs make it into your blood glucose and have the impact that you're looking for them to have. Now, this is a chart here where we've got the glycemic index of foods. So the lower the number, the slower digesting they are. The higher the number, the quicker digesting they are. So this is where your carb choices start to become important. So if you've got a really busy day ahead at work and you know that you're going to be going maybe 4-5 hours without a meal, it would then make sense to have a breakfast that's got a low GI, simply because that's going to be a slow, steady release of carbohydrates into your bloodstream. So this is where, for example, you could have porridge oats, nice, slow, steady release. If you've got a super busy day where you're going to have to train first thing in the morning after your first meal, you want the food to digest as quick as possible. So you want that glucose turn into glycogen as quick as possible so that you can fuel your training session. This is where you would then choose a different source of carbohydrate. You could either go with a medium GI or a high GI. Me personally, I would go with medium because my sessions take quite a long time. If I'm going to be going in and doing a half-hour session, I'd probably go for a high GI. So 9 times out of 10, if we're looking to build muscle, we're going to be in the gym for a little while, going through our sessions, this is where we would select a medium GI. Again, something like, Nutri-Grain, Weetabix. These are nice, light food sources to eat that are going to give you a slightly slower release of glycogen. Immediately after your workout, you're going to want to replenish those glycogen stores as soon as possible. So it would then make sense to have a high GI carbohydrate. Again, we can have cereal, we can have things like bagels. These things, again, super light, super easy to eat, and super quick to digest, beginning the recovery process. Does anybody have any questions on carbs? Now, protein is what I like to look at as a building block for your body, whether that's building muscle or whether it contributes to other functions. Now, it will help with muscle repair, it can help with your skin, it can help with your hair, it can help with your nails. Protein also enables many of your body's vital functions as well. Every cell in your body contains protein. Now, this is why we have to have a much more regular intake of protein, because it's the only macronutrient that your body won't actually store. This is why when throughout the day, you know, if you're having say 4 or 5 meals, you have to break up your protein intake over those meals, so that way your body isn't going without it for too long, because these cells then start to break down if you're not keeping it topped up. Proteins are made of amino acids, and the body can produce many amino acids, but this is where it does get a wee bit complex, because 9 of the amino acids that are needed, known as essential amino acids, everybody takes EAAs when they train, and this is because, again, it doesn't store them. So this is where these essential amino acids need to be consumed. Okay, so retaining, building muscle. This is again taking me back to the point of breaking your protein intake up throughout the day. But many of us won't know how much protein we actually need. And for both males and females, the easiest way to calculate it is between 1 to 2 grams for each kilogram of body weight. Okay, so for example, if you weigh 180 pounds, you know that you're not going to lose any muscle tissue if you take in 180 grams of protein each day. If you're looking to build that little bit more muscle, you can increment your protein intake up until about 2 grams. Me personally, having working with people over the years, I find that when you go above 2 grams per kilo of body weight, digestion starts to slow down, because it is the macronutrient that takes longer to digest out of every other one. And this here is a diagram of protein synthesis. Now, a lot of folk will think that when we're in the gym, we're actually building muscle, but we're not, we're breaking it. Every time you come at the gym feeling absolutely whacked, and you might feel good because you've got a pump, but that doesn't mean that the muscle's grown. That simply just means that you've transported glycogen into that muscle along with the blood to fill it up. In fact, you're actually breaking it down. And this is what the diagram shows us here. So as the amino acids go in, this is when the muscle synthesis begins. Muscle protein is intaken, but as you go through your activity, it's breaking back down again. So you constantly have to be on top of this cycle here, because if you go train and then you don't have your protein after you've trained, you're going to leave that muscle broken. It's not going to rebuild, it's not going to get bigger, and it's been a waste of a session. So again, protein spread evenly throughout the day, but making sure that you get that in before you train and after you train is really, really important, because you don't want all that work that you've done in the gym to be for nothing. Fats. Does anybody avoid fats in their diet in this room? Good, because fats are really important. And, you know, contrary to popular belief, they don't actually make you fat. This is why I refer to them as essential fats, because in my opinion, your body really, really needs these, in particular for females. I'm not a big fan of running females on extremely low-fat diets, simply because the biggest purpose of fats is to regulate your hormones. And if you're not taking in enough essential fats, you're not going to be able to keep on top of your hormone cycle as females. But it's the same with us guys. They regulate our hormones too, contributing to our mood, contributing to how flat the muscle can be. If you're pushing fats into your nutrition along with your carbohydrates, it actually holds the carbohydrate in the muscle that little bit longer than if you don't. Now, if you're taking in too many carbs, too many fats post-workout along with your carbs, it slows down the digestion process. So this is the only point in the day where I would run literally low to no fats, is post-workout, because we want to replenish those glycogen stores as quick as possible. And if you've taken in a lot of fats with that, it's going to slow it right down. Who here's had a hypo attack where they felt their blood sugars drop? What did you take to bring them back up?
Jelly babies.
Brilliant. Is there any fat in jelly babies?
I'd just say.
None. Absolutely none. And the reason those jelly babies go in there is because they're glucose. So it's just glucose straight back in there to bring your blood sugars back up. If you were to have had, say, pizza, now this happened to me at the very, very beginning of my fitness journey. I didn't really have a clue what I was doing in regards to nutrition or anything. So I was literally just going, training, eating what I wanted. And I'd trained really hard one day, done cardio and felt my blood sugars drop. I went home and I was having a pizza as my off-plan meal. So had the pizza, my blood sugars just would not come back up no matter how hard I tried, because there was so many saturates in that pizza that it took ages for the glucose to get into my blood. And I just kept sweating, I kept shaking. And if I would have done something as simple as maybe had a rice cake or two, because they're so fast in the GI index, boom, my blood sugars would have been back to where they were straight away. But again, it's when things like this happen, knowing what is high in GI and what is low in GI with your carbohydrate intake is really important, especially for people with medical conditions such as diabetes. Does anybody in here suffer from diabetes? No? So again, work with a lot of clients who do. And what I'll always have them do is in their gym bag is I'll always have them have a very fast acting carb source on them as an emergency, because if their blood sugars crash and they need to bring them back up, something as simple as 2 rice cakes or a banana is going to do that. It's just that their insulin levels aren't as controlled as what they are when you don't have diabetes. So knowing your food sources is really important. Now again, consuming fats is vital for bodily function, okay? Brain activity in particular. Now again, if you run a really low fat diet, you've probably felt brain fog at some point. And this is because your brain actually needs the energy that it gets from nutritious fats. The fats are broken down into what is called triglycerides, and this is a form of glucose as well. It is just a much slower form of glucose, hence why the pizza that I had that day, I had the hypo, never touched the sides, because it was so slow that it took ages for me to come back around. So using fats as a fast-acting energy source is never a good idea. Again, best time to have fats is with your breakfast in the morning. Who here has eggs for the breakfast? Good. Now, the reason you have eggs is probably because it's something that you've always associated with breakfast. But for me, when I make a meal plan, I think, right, this client of mine has got to get through a whole day. I'm expecting them to train, I'm expecting them to do their cardio, I'm expecting them to do 12,000 steps a day. But how can I expect my client to do that unless I've given them the fuel that they're going to need? So when they're taking in, say, eggs for breakfast in the morning, I know for a fact that as the day goes on, the triglycerides are going to start releasing into their body. So they're going to have a slow acting fuel source there, so that they're always running on something and never running on empty. There's 2 main types of dietary fats. You've got saturated fats and you've got unsaturated fats. Saturated fats and unsaturated, there's a bit of a crossover. Now, I will use both when I'm creating a meal plan, because the facts are, fats taste good, whether it's saturated or not. I sometimes prefer fats over carbs, and that's simply because I like the way they taste. So again, when it comes to creating meal plans, the best meal plan that you can ever create is the one that the client enjoys. Now, it's not going to hurt if, say, I've got some cheese in there at some point on a nutrition plan, because If that client likes cheese, they can have it. But it's like everything, moderation with saturated fats is the way we want to go. It's not a case of having to avoid these things completely. It's a case of having control over them and using them in a moderated way. An example of what we would class as healthy fats here, okay? As I mentioned, I personally like to use cheese as a fat source in my clients' plans, but as you can see, it's not on the photo here because most people want to associate it with healthy fats. But again, with saturates, as long as they're taken in moderation, they're not going to do any harm. This is where it does get a bit more interesting. This diagram here, this is the effect of cholesterol levels if you're using clean fat sources. Now, for example, picture I just showed you there, avocado, cod liver oil, dark chocolate, you know, these are all forms, nut butters, nuts themselves. These are all examples of unsaturated fats. And this here's a diet and somebody's blood readings that has been taking in unsaturated fats compared to somebody who's been taking in saturated. This is your cholesterol levels. Now, cholesterol, if you don't have control over it, can lead to negative health problems. For example, poor heart health. We always want to make sure that heart health is on point because, let's face it, we all know somebody who's suffered heart problems at some point in their life. And again, cholesterol is one of the biggest contributors to that. This here, fat sources that we all love. But again, if you were making a diet up just full of hot dogs, donuts, you know, chips, burgers, you know, cakes, that is going to lead to poor cholesterol levels. And again, it's going to lead to an increase in body fat because these saturated fats take even longer to break down than what an unsaturated fat does. So this is where you will start storing these saturated fats as body fat. Probably the most underrated part of nutrition is hydration. Now, every single week, you know, I'm dealing with 75 check-ins a week. And out of those 75 check-ins per week, I would say at least 50% of them, I'm having to encourage people to intake more water. Now, what I'll always get when I have to say it to somebody is, look, we need more water coming in, we need more water. But I don't like to taste it. I find it hard to drink. Our body is made up mostly of water, okay? You would actually survive a great deal longer without food than what you would without water. It's actually water that enables your circulatory system, okay? And this is essential because, again, carrying things like oxygen and nutrients into your cells is the only way to transport nutrients. So if you're not looking after your water intake, it could lead to poor kidney health. And it's going to then become hard to filter out the waste products that you're taking in within your body. So again, there is no set amount of water that any human should intake, okay, because it's different for us all, based upon those key points that I went right through at the very beginning. You know, your lifestyle, your work, your job, everything like that. So what I tend to base it on is activity levels and your calorie consumption. Now, as a rule of thumb, I don't really have people take in any less than 3 litres of water a day. You can be in a state of dehydration without even realising it. How many times you went through the day and you just get a random sore head? I think most of us have at some point. Instead of thinking you're taking unwell, just think about how much water you've drunk in the day. Because 9 times out of 10, it's going to come down to dehydration. You might not feel thirsty, but that doesn't mean that your body doesn't need more water. Now again, in this weather that we've had recently, you'll be sweating without realising it. Now when we sweat, we lose sodium, we lose hydration. So it makes sense to replace that, doesn't it? So your water intake is going to vary depending on the time of the year and your activity levels. Now if you're training, you're coming into a gym like this, you know, there's no aircon in here. It can become really stuffy, you can be sweating, and if you're not replacing that with increasing your water intake throughout your sessions, you gotta really struggle to get the nutrients into your bloodstream. You guys struggle to transport those nutrients around your body. So this is why I'm always harping on to people about the water intake, because you could have the best adherence to your nutrition in the world, but unless you're hydrating yourself and you're pushing these nutrients into all your cells, it's not going to do anything for you. Now sodium, again, something that we don't really take into consideration that we're losing, you know, throughout the day. But without sodium, we're going to throw our electrolyte balance off. And the easiest way to get sodium is through salt and other supplementation as well. I'm a big fan of using magnesium in most of my clients' plans, and this is because it helps with your electrolyte balance. As you can see at the top of the graph here, we've got sodium coming from salt, we've got chlorine coming from fruit, veg, magnesium, which you can get from certain greens, but it's few and far between, so I much prefer to supplement that. And again, calcium, potassium. Okay, these are all key components to making sure that you are hydrated. Who here suffers from cramp? Yeah, it ruins my life, and it's so bad. Last night, I thought my quad was literally going to pop off the bone. It was that bad. I thought Ellie was going to have to carry me upstairs. I always have to go grind up at least 2 grams of pink salt, about 1 litre of water. Then I have to do a magnesium supplement, and then I have to have a banana as well in order for it to go away. There's some of us that are just unfortunate, like me, that suffer with a poor electrolyte balance. So we will have to substitute that with paying close attention, you know, to the balance that we create there, where sodium, chlorine, magnesium, calcium, potassium. Does anybody know what the first step of digestion actually is? Yes. Yes. Okay. So, in order to get the body to absorb the nutrients needed to basically stay alive, let alone grow muscle, lose body fat, we have to be in a position where we pass it into our bloodstream, and then it has to be taken to wherever it needs to go in the body. So the first stage of digestion is putting something in your mouth. Many times you watched your dog literally destroy a treat, and then 2 minutes later it's away being sick. That's because it's not even had time to digest, it's just come straight back up. It's too fast. What we have to do, we have to make a conscious effort to chew food. I once did a coach, I don't know if anybody knows Cal Team Pro Coach, Cal Raystrick. I was having digestive issues and he made me chew every spoonful of food 30 times. Yeah, it was taking me about an hour to eat each meal. But I'm telling you something, I will never forget it because I learned, because any of those little issues that I was having were completely gone. Chewing your food 30 times is quite excessive, but it got me into the habit of making sure I was chewing and not just wolfing it down. Okay, so the food then passes into the esophagus and then from there into the stomach. And this is where your stomach will release digestive enzymes into the acid that then break that food down. Who here's had a coach that is giving them a digestive enzyme in their nutrition plan at some point? Yes. Okay. That is because sometimes in order to, give the body a little kick, we need to add in extra digestive enzymes in order to keep nutrition on point. And that's what helps break the food up. And then when the food gets into the gut, we've got muscles that are inside your gut here that actually churn the food up. So there's a lot happening without you even realising it. You've just had couple of spoonfuls of oats, you think, God, that's no touch the sides, I'm still starving. But as this food is going in, it's going through such a complex process. It's passing all the way through here, it's then hitting the gut, it's been broken down with all these digestive enzymes that your body naturally produces. It's then being put through a crusher, and that's where it's all broken up. Now, through that process, this is where the nutrient absorption happens, okay? And again, this takes place in the small intestine, and that is in your digestive tract, obviously. The food that you've just taken into your small intestine will spend 2 to 6 hours in there, okay? So this is where meal timings become really important. If you've got 5 meals on your meal plan and you're struggling to fit those 5 meals in, if you've got a really busy job, if you work on site, things like that, and you can't get a break to get all these meals in, so you think, need to be adherent, need to get these meals in, so I've got to put 2 meals together and have them all in a one. If you think about it, that is a lot of food to take into your gut. That is a lot of food that is going to sit there for 2 to 6 hours. You're still running behind on your meals, so you have a meal an hour later. So you've just taken in more food to sit on top of all those 2 meals that you've just put in there that are going to be in that gut for 2 to 6 hours. So that's still there as you've taken in more. People wonder why they're bloated. That is why you're not giving the food enough time to break down and digest. Again, timing, portion control, it's super, super important. And it is a bit of a minefield when you look at it and you think, oh God, where do I start with nutrition? But this is why I've set the seminar up this way, because we take building muscle, losing body fat out of the equation, and you focus on how your body actually works, it becomes really simple. It's a machine. It's like a car. If you've just filled your car up with diesel and it's made the clicking noise and it says it's full, if you start trying to put in more diesel, it's not going to do the car any good. It's going to start spouting back out at you. Your body is no different, okay? So, when your small intestine has finished its job over that 2 to 6 hour period, the large intestine then finishes the job for you. And this is where it will create what we know as shit. And during that 12 to 30 hours it spends in here, that's where it then meets a liquid mixture. It arrives, it's turned into stools, and the water content is slowly absorbed by the large intestine. So again, unless you've got enough hydration going in there, there's not going to be enough water in that area to form a proper stool, okay? So hydration, again, is playing a major part in breaking down all your food and turning it into shit, basically. Again, this is diagram. So, through here, first port of call, comes all the way in. As your food is passing through the small intestine and then into the large intestine, your liver, your bladder, they've not labelled the kidneys here, all that is working at the same time. So there's a lot happening in here. So in order for everything to function properly here, we have to make sure that we've got decent recovery rate, because if you're running on empty, you're pushing your body to the max with training, you're not sleeping, all these functions slow down. So this is why recovery is such a priority as well, but recovery and nutrition go hand in hand. We need to treat the body with care because there's a lot of complex processes happening in there. Hopefully this shows you why training can sometimes just be the tip of the iceberg. Now, nutrition in relation to your goals. Hopefully now we're having a better understanding of what nutrition is and how your body actually works with this nutrition. You'll understand that it's not a case of eat XYZ, get huge, get shredded. Doesn't work like that. And that's why if you do not know what you're doing and how the body works, you should never be building a nutrition plan for somebody thinking Phil Heath and Seabum eat chicken and rice, so that must work. Doesn't work like that. It's not about what you eat, it's about how you eat it. Now, the things that need to be considered: energy balance, digestion, hydration, and recovery. In order for everything to work, these 4 points have to be on point at all time. So, if you're looking to gain size, this is where you need to be in a calorie surplus. If you're looking to lose body fat and get shredded, this is where you have to be in a calorie deficit. Again, hopefully this shows how these topics are the tip of the iceberg. When you've got all these other things in place, like your digestion, your hydration, your food choices, hopefully that way you know that losing body fat is easy when this is all in a structured, laid out manner. Building muscle is easy once it's all structured and laid out properly. It's a case of time and consistency and paying attention to the small details. It's exactly the same if you're just looking to maintain your current body composition. Not everybody wants to change their body. Some people might have, already acquired the shape and condition that they want. But that doesn't mean to say that they take their eye off the ball with these key areas that always have to be considered. Because if they let hydration, digestion, recovery, and energy balance slip, they're going to start losing that look. So no matter what phase you're in, these points are always applicable. The structure and nutrition. Okay, so far we have identified that nutrition is fuel, hydration is essential, and digestion is key. Now, whether you're looking to lose the body fat, build muscle, or maintain, we need to make sure that meals are spread as evenly as possible through the day. Avoid combining meals. Prioritise fueling and training sessions, pre and post workout, making sure that protein, carbohydrates, and essential fats are consumed before you train, and then protein and carbohydrates are consumed after you train. Recovery always has to be prioritised. Again, consuming that post-workout meal is important. 9 times out of 10 when I have a client join me, they don't have a pre or post-workout meal, they'll have a breakfast, lunch, dinner. So sometimes I have to make that fit into how that's going to work with their training, because that's all they might have time to eat in a day. So that's where food choices become really, really important. And again, ensuring that we are consuming enough water on a daily basis in relation to your activity to keep digestion on point. So the things to remember are, there's no magic food sources. Consistency is essential. You can't do this for a day or two and expect to get the results you want. This is an accumulation of days, months, weeks, years. Fuel your body appropriately, train hard, recover even harder, being hydrated, being kind to your gut, paying attention to how it feels, making note of how often you're going to the toilet, having a look, does that look healthy? Is that the way it's meant to look? If it's not, there's something wrong. Carbs are not the devil. So, you eat, you train, it might be ugly, but you sleep whenever you can. And the factors that I would always take into consideration when you're creating a meal plan are this. For any client that I have ever set up and ever will set up, doesn't matter if they're a lifestyle client or somebody who is looking to one day compete at Mr. Olympia competition, it'll always be, what is this client's goal? What is their current lifestyle? What is their current body composition? And their weight, obviously, because a lot of calculations have to be done on your current body weight. What is daily activity? What is the occupation? Because somebody's occupation will dictate a hell of a lot more than what you think. That is what's going to enable me to know how many meals that person can eat realistically in the day. Again, it's not a case of copying and pasting Dan's nutrition into Robbie's nutrition and expecting these guys to be able to follow it. Dan works offshore, Robbie doesn't. Dan doesn't have access to cooking his own food, Robbie does. So how do I make that work as a coach? It doesn't ever work just handing out somebody else's nutrition plan. It doesn't ever work jumping on Google and seeing a meal plan that's going to get you shredded or make you huge. It doesn't work like that. Again, food allergies, foods likes, dislikes, because as I said throughout the seminar, the best plan to follow is the plan that you enjoy eating. If you don't enjoy the foods on your meal plan, you're never going to be able to stick to it. Adherence capability. If I've got somebody who is going to be great at following their nutrition Monday to Friday with absolute no problems whatsoever, but then loses their head at the weekend and doesn't want to follow their plans, but they still want to get shredded. Again, it's my job to make that work. It's not my job to say to that person, nah, you're never going to get shredded. I'm the one with the knowledge. I'm supposed to be able to make that work. So what I'll do is I'll run them in a decent deficit Monday to Friday and allow them to be able to have more freedom at the weekend, because 2 days of them being more relaxed is not going to outdo 5 days of a very strict calorie deficit where they're following it to the gram and to the T, making sure that all these things are nailed down. The only thing I will ever ask of that person is when they're being relaxed at the weekend is, again, they make sure the digestion's on point, they make sure the hydration's on point, and they make sure that meals aren't being consumed in a way where they're shoveling in thousands of calories in the one go. This here is an example of a training plan. It's probably quite, a nutrition plan for one of my clients. Probably really hard to see, but you'll notice here, this is a training day. This is one of my clients, Alex. He's an open class bodybuilder, and I've particularly used his nutrition here because it's quite extreme, okay? His calories are really high. So the biggest problem that we often find is trying to fit in a large amount of food over a short amount of time in the day. This guy works 12-hour shifts, okay? He is absolutely amazing at following his plan. He doesn't have it easy. He's up against the odds all the time. His steps are sky high, stress levels, we have to manage them as well. But we work together and we make it work. Now, he's got 6 meals in the day, yet he works 12 hours. So what he does, he's allocated an hour's lunch break and I think it's a half-hour break in the morning. Instead of taking that whole hour, he spoke it over with his boss to break it up into, I think he does 6 10-minute breaks. What he'll do is he'll use those 10-minute breaks across the day to get these meals fitted in. Then he's got a half hour to chill. Again, it works. He's still using his same amount of time that everybody else gets in his workplace. He's just using it for a different purpose. As you can see, his calories are very evenly broken down all the way until his last meal here, which he will have with his family. And that's where his stress levels are super high. We have to make sure that we release enough serotonin in his brain in order for his melatonin to rise, in order for him to sleep properly. So we take in a decent amount of essential fats, 27 grams, because that's going to keep his body fueled as he sleeps through the night. Slow release energy. Oh, high amount of carbs as well. High amount of carbs, because he's the type of guy, if he doesn't have a decent amount of carbs before he goes to bed at night, he won't get to sleep. His pre and his post-workout meals, relatively large. As you can see, he only has 10 grams of fat before he trains, because that's all he needs. And he's what? How many grams is that? He's 140 grams of carbs before he trains. Okay? So this guy, because he's got a lot of muscle, he needs a lot of fuel. He's weighing in just now at what? 100 odd kilo. I wouldn't give this plan to a boy that was weighing 65 kilo. He's not going to need that amount of food. Okay, he won't have that amount of muscle to absorb all that. Yes, he might be active, but again, taking it on the body composition, knowing that the muscle density is high, the body fat levels are low, we have to make things accordingly. This is why you can never just jump on Google and follow a meal plan that somebody else is. That's his non-training day calories. Again, you'll notice the biggest meal of the day for him is his breakfast, because he needs a slow release of energy through the day, because he's not going to be training that day. So again, I change where the energy is going to be releasing in order to match his day at work. This is why everything has to be personalised and it can never be generic. And that is his macronutrient breakdown. He's taking in but nearly 280 grams of carbs and protein on a training day, 275 on a rest day, 600 carbs on a training day, 500 on a rest day, 70 grams of fat on a rest day, 57 on a training day. Now the reason he doesn't need as much carbs on a rest day is because his output isn't as high. He doesn't need to fuel and replenish the training session. So what we do is we give him more fats so that there's a slower, more sustained energy release throughout the day. This keeps him in a nice calorie surplus so that his body weight keeps trending up and he keeps building muscle. Right guys, so hopefully I have covered some things that you don't really think about when it comes to your nutrition. Hopefully I've given you a breakdown here to prove that these are all things that I take into consideration when I am creating client plans and managing client plans. And hopefully there's a couple of things within these slides here, because I will give them all out to you, I'll WhatsApp them all to you,